Okay, let's unpack this a bit. Habits. We all have them, right?
Absolutely.
And usually when we think about habits, we think about, well, maybe mindlessly scrolling your phone first thing. Stuff you do on autopilot.
Yeah, that's the common picture. Fixed routines, almost unconscious.
But what if that's not the full story? Turns out Aristotle, way back when, had a really different take.
He did. A much more dynamic view, actually. He saw habits more as learned abilities, things that actually build our skills.
But give us more control, not less.
Exactly. More control over what we do, which is, pretty different from how we often hear about them now.
It really is. Because the modern neuroscience view, which owes a lot to thinkers like William James.
Right. That view often paints habits as, rigid, unconscious, sometimes even working against what we're trying consciously to achieve.
Like they're separate from our goals.
Almost, yeah. Neuroscience often defines a habit based on, persistence. You keep doing it even if it stops working or if the reward isn't there anymore.
Huh. Like, still driving the old way to work even after you've moved house and it makes no sense.
Precisely. That kind of ingrained pattern, regardless of the current outcome, often based on studies with animals, you see.
Okay, so for this deep dive, we're really going to dig into Aristotle's original idea, using the research from the Aristotelian conception of habit.
And its contribution to human neuroscience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the goal here isn't just, a history chat. It's about understanding this other way of thinking so that you, listening, can maybe get a richer sense of your own habit.
How they form, and maybe more importantly, how you could actively shake them.
Right. Use them for growth, for getting better at things, not just being stuck in a rut. It's about intentional development.
And if you look at Aristotle's bigger picture, he really focused on what he called behavioral plasticity, our ability to learn, to acquire new ways of doing things to get what we want.
So a habit for him was
What's
an acquired disposition.
That's the term, yes. An acquired disposition. A way our potential gets organized through action. And his key insight was that acting doesn't just change the thing you're working on.
It changes you.
It changes you, the agent. Every time you act, it leaves a trace, a kind of learning. It makes you more disposed to act that way again, hopefully better in the future.
And this is where it gets really interesting for me, because he saw habit formation as active, as doing.
Absolutely, inherently goal-directed. His examples are classics, aren't they?
Yeah, like you become a builder by building.
Or a musician by playing music, or even a just person by doing just actions. It's learning through practice.
This whole idea of habit as learning, it's fundamentally about getting skilled.
That really sets his view apart. And it leads to thinking about, good habits versus bad habits.
Which we all talk about, right?
Mm-hmm.
But how did Aristotle see the difference? You mentioned neuroscience, like Graybill's work touches on this too.
Right. The research we're looking at suggests Aristotle's framework links it directly to cognitive control. So good habits, the habits as learning, are the ones that actually enhance your cognitive control.
Meaning they help you adapt better, reach your goals more effectively.
Exactly. You're more skilled, more flexible, more in control because of the habit.
Okay, so then the bad habits, the habits as routines.
Those are the ones characterized by rigidity. They can actually block your goals or make things worse. That sounds much more like the neuroscience definition we started with, doesn't it?
It does. The sort of automatic, inflexible behavior. Like mindlessly practicing scales versus really trying to play musically.
That's a great analogy, and the paper suggests that maybe these habits as routines are actually a sort of cognitively impoverished version of the learning habit.
Impoverished? How so?
Well, maybe the focus in lab settings, particularly with animals who have, different cognitive capacities, led to this narrower view. It might miss the richness of how humans learn complex skills through repetition aimed at a goal.
Got it. Okay, so Aristotle didn't just lump all habits together. He had categories.
Yes, he broke them down. The research uses some updated terms to make it clearer for us. 3 main types.
Let's walk through them. First up, theoretical habits. Knowing that.
Right. But this isn't just rote memorization. It's about retaining learning that requires real understanding. Comprehension.
So not just remembering facts, but getting the principles, like in maths or science.
Exactly. Understanding why geometry works, not just memorizing theorems. You can repeat stuff endlessly, but that doesn't mean you've truly grasped it. It's the difference between knowing directions and understanding how a map works, or even how the car works. One lets you follow, the other lets you navigate or even fix things.
And having that deeper understanding, that theoretical habit, lets you tackle new problems in that area, maybe even push the boundaries.
Precisely. It enables further learning and innovation. The paper links it to things like explicit memory, cognitive skills, even that aha moment of insight in neuroscience.
Okay, second category, behavioral habits.
Or knowing how to behave. This is fascinating. It's centered on what Aristotle called phronesis.
Phronesis, practical wisdom.
Practical wisdom, yeah. Making good judgments in real life. It involves rationally guiding your desires, that's temperance, and your impulses, like fear or anger, that's fortitude or courage.
So it's about learning to manage your emotions with reason through practice.
Yes. The idea that emotions aren't just wild forces. They can be shaped by reason, guided towards rational goals. And these habits are how we improve that ability. It affects how you decide things.
So you learn to respond thoughtfully instead of just reacting. That makes sense.
And neuroscientifically, this connects to how our brains handle decision-making, moral choices, the whole interplay between thinking and feeling.
Okay, and the third type, technical habits.
Knowing how to make or to do. This is where skills aimed at an external goal fit in. Things often involving embodied or motor skills.
So like playing an instrument or carpentry or surgery. This is where the neuroscience focus on motor routines fits.
It fits within this category, yes. Motor routines are part of it. But crucially, for Aristotle, these technical habits aren't just the routine. They're still guided by reason and aimed at a goal.
Right. The pianist, again, it's not just fingers moving automatically.
No, it's knowing how and when to move them to create music to achieve the artistic goal. It requires the motor skill plus the understanding and control. There's that great quote in the paper from Averroes.
Oh, yeah.
He said, commenting on Aristotle, "Habit is that whereby we act when we will."
When we will. That emphasizes the choice, the control, doesn't it? Even in a skill.
Exactly. It's not mindless compulsion. And neuroscience links this clearly to procedural learning, how we learn those how-to skills.
So taking this broader Aristotelian view, how does it really enrich or maybe even challenge the neuroscience perspective that often focuses just on those routines?
Well, the main contribution highlighted is how it emphasizes the cognitive enrichment of actions through habit. It's not just about automaticity, it's about developing habits that allow for flexibility, adaptation, and achieving higher-level goals.
Like the pianist focusing on expression, because the notes and fingers are handled more automatically.
Precisely. The basic elements become less attention-demanding, freeing up cognitive resources for the more complex, goal-oriented aspects of the task.
What about consciousness? The neuroscience view often sees habits as unconscious routines. How does habit as learning fit?
It's a different relationship. Habits as learning aren't fully unconscious in the way routines might become. They reduce the need for conscious focus on the basics, sure, but they remain accessible to conscious guidance and control.
So not locked in sequences.
Not at all. They're flexible. Think about chunking grouping actions together. That allows for smooth execution, but also lets you adapt parts of the sequence if needed. You're still overseeing it, directing it towards the goal.
And this framework also gives us a better way to think about good versus bad habits, doesn't it? Beyond just liking or disliking them.
Definitely. Good habits, the learning ones, enhance cognitive control, build skill, help you reach goals. Bad habits, the routine ones, involve rigidity, maybe a loss of cognitive control, and can undermine your goals.
It makes the distinction feel more functional, related to growth and control.
Yes. And it helps understand things like addiction or compulsion, perhaps not just as strong routines, but as a situation where the underlying cognitive control over a learned ability has weakened or broken down.
The paper also stressed the quality of repetition, not just doing something over and over.
Critically important. Just repeating isn't enough for Aristotle's view of good habit formation. You need focused, correct practice. Bad practice can actually make you worse.
Right, you ingrain the wrong thing.
Exactly. That behavioral plasticity, the ability to refine and improve through deliberate practice, is what makes a virtuoso different from someone just going through the motions.
So how might these beneficial habits as learning turn into those problematic habits as routines?
The idea is that they can decay. If the cognitive control element weakens, if you stop actively directing the habit towards its goal, it can become more rigid, more automatic, less adaptive.
So the goal itself is really important. Keeping that in mind.
Absolutely crucial. Without a clear goal providing meaning and direction, a routine can become empty, maybe even compulsive. There's mention of a study where monkeys with certain brain lesions developed stereotyped, meaningless routines because that goal-directed control was gone.
Wow. So that lack of cognitive control seems key in understanding things like OCD, or even just everyday mistakes, those slips of action.
That's the argument. It's not just that a routine exists, it's that the link between the routine and the intended, consciously held goal is temporarily or chronically broken. The cognitive oversight fails.
And this suggests maybe potential ways to intervene.
Potentially, yes. The idea is floated that maybe encouraging the development or reestablishment of cognitively driven habits as learning, could help people overcome rigid, unhelpful routines, even in pathological conditions, focusing on the why and the conscious control element.
So wrapping this up, Aristotle's view seems incredibly relevant today. It's not just about breaking bad habits by stopping them.
No, it's much more about building good habits through intentional, goal-directed practice.
Seeing habits fundamentally as a form of learning, a way we enhance our skills and gain genuine control, rather than losing it to mindless routines.
That's the core insight, I think. Habits cultivated consciously become tools for mastery, for achieving what you intend.
It really invites you, the listener, to think about your own patterns, doesn't it? Which habits feel like they're making you more skilled, more adaptable, more in control?
And which ones feel more like just routines, maybe even routines that get in the way sometimes.
And the provocative thought perhaps is, could consciously cultivating the right kind of habits, really focusing on that goal-directed learning aspect, be a major key to unlocking more potential, more freedom in how you act and what you achieve?
It's a powerful question. Moving beyond just doing habits to consciously building them as skills.
Definitely something to consider. This Aristotelian lens gives us a much richer way to think about how we learn, grow, and shape our own lives through practice. We hope this deep dive gives you some new ways to think about developing the skills and control you're aiming for.